You please rise to honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy,
Here.
Ms. Rostikowicz,
Here.
Ms. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Conway,
Here.
Mr. Gignac,
Here.
Mr. Leary,
Here.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. Under special order of business, we have the Spotlight on Excellence for the summer reading program, and I recognize Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I was just talking about books and I got a little overzealous, so appreciate my tardiness. To this evening is one of my favorite evenings, and all of ours who work on behalf of the children and families of Lowell. It is our summer reading celebration, and so there are lots of thanks that come into play. All of the families for your support in making sure your children continue to read through the summer, and all of them trips to the library and trips to the bookstores. Thank you so much. To all of the agencies that work with children during the summer, we'd like to thank them also. And so tonight we have this great opportunity to honor a few children from every building, and there are many more. Each child got a certificate for their participation across the city. And there were virtually thousands of certificates that went up from the Office of Curriculum, Mrs. Abrams' office. And tonight we get to see the faces behind the work. And so we welcome each of you here. We thank you all for being here. And thank you for your trust in Lowell Public Schools and being our most important partners. Thank you so very much. So we do have a process that we will bring the children up here, and so parents, you are free to photograph, you are free to enjoy the moment. This will be televised, so your children will be on TV, and we think you should watch the entire school committee meeting, so we're gonna bank on that you're doing that. So here we're going to take the children and bring them up here. They will shake hands with me and the mayor, and we will present each child with a gift certificate to continue their reading beyond today. So we thank each of you, and so we'll start the process.
With the Bailey School, please. Jennifer Nguyen, Maya Hagan, Michael Lee, Bartlett School, Andy Mendoza, Mary Hong, and Destiny Cervantes. Butler School, Alicia Pond, Amber Maker, Xavier Ortiz. Daly School, Erin McCabe. Adhershari Hund, Allison Pollard. Freshman Academy. I don't. Oh, it's very small. Katie Dyson. Catherine Mansour. Michelle Shan. Somanathi Koi. The Greenelch School, Jordan Morales, Julie McNamara, and Janely Amonte. The Lincoln School, Richmond Porsang, Veronica Porsang, and Veronica Aguilera. McAuliffe School, Braden Moore, Hannah Muldoon, Pedro Rodriguez. McAvenue School, Jalen Platt, Diana Marquez, Jimenez, Marissa Abshire. The Moody School, Angelos Boulez, Alice Mwangi, and Pritam Ray. Maury School, Luigi Ferreira, Kenny Lam, and Tiffany Chandaluan. Merkland School, Vadi Kong, Jennifer Kai, Jaden Quinones. Pawtucketville School, Juliet Thatch, Ashley Tran, Hunter Martell. Jennifer Kai from the Merkland School. Pine Arts School, Megan Gray, she was from the Merkland? Merkland? Okay. Min Nguyen and Joy Mahuega. The Riley School, Anthony Aknakat, Carly Ahern, Rose Prout. Robinson School, Veronica Lack, Alexander Luna, and Ivanta Fontanes. Shaughnessy School, Ayana Galdino, Alessandra Cleary, and Raman Rosario. Stocklosa School, Harith Kassin, Sovanara Reth, Benjamin Sapp. Sullivan School, Matthew Porter, Adrian Tulija, James Maniscalco. And the Wang School, William Wolf, Jason Beret, Hannah Dangle. And the Washington School, Dylan Tarini, Gabrielle Hernandez, And our last special reader, Faven Kut.
I know, thank you.
Can take pictures, take a little recess? Yep. Is that okay?
I wish.
For parents who would like to take pictures, we could allow that now if you like.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Nobody wanted to shake my hand, but they all wanted to take my picture. I didn't. Congratulations to all the students who were readers over the summer. Next, under special order of business, we have OMR Architects, comprehensive facility assessment, goals, values, and objectives, and also we'll have the.
Just make a motion to take the facility subcommittee out of order to go in conjunction with the presentation. Make that as a form of motion.
Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Leary will report the findings, the information that was presented at the subcommittee meeting. But at that committee meeting, there was a motion that for the OMR architect group to come in to present a overview to the committee as a whole. And so that's what we have right now. So I welcome, I'm going to ask Jay Lang, just our deputy superintendent, to announce the people coming here, because I have to say that your names have escaped me at this moment. I apologize.
Thank you. We had a facility subcommittee meeting on Monday, the 23rd, and Gene Roberts and Dave from OMR Architects gave a presentation that night. The process we're at now, they outlined what the values, goals, and objectives for the comprehensive facility assessment are. And they're here tonight to walk through some of those slides with us. So at this point, I would turn it over to Gene and Dave to walk us through a very brief presentation.
I hope you're not right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Madam Superintendent and School Committee. Get right into the presentation. Jay asked me to do a little bit of overview before we get into the goals and values, so I will start there. And I know that Jay sent to all of you some information about what we have done so far, so that should hopefully give you some background to what I'll be talking about tonight. We began working with you at the end of May, and this project will be finished in January of 2014. Since we last saw you back in May, our team has been going through all of the schools throughout Lowell and assessing the physical condition of each and every building. That does not include the programmatic portions, but includes the facility conditions. We've also been working with visioning groups, including the educational leadership team and the working group, to talk about visioning and goals and values, and so we'll be bringing that information to you. As you can see on this chart, the orange line is where we are today, and we have had 3 working group meetings so far, and we will continue through December with those. In addition, you'll see the orange triangles. That shows where we're having some public forums. We're hoping to have a public forum with you, the school committee, during the week of November 11th, to come back to you with master planning ideas and options for you to consider. So what we're doing today, by the end of this session that I have with you this time, we hope to have goals and values, priorities and objectives set for the master plan so that we can proceed into preparing options that meet the needs of Lowell Public Schools. So just some of the considerations that we look at when we do master plan that we have been working with the schools over the last few months includes looking at your neighborhoods, the population size, future growth, the city infrastructure, connections and barriers throughout the city, and the needs of your neighborhoods. We've also been looking at your schools in the way of the building age, the building size, the population of each school, enrollment projections and bubbles throughout the system, and parity amongst the schools. We've been looking at grade configuration, and we've been looking at where the schools are located, whether they're near fields and parks, near or not near fields, whether they are sister schools that share a site, or twin schools that share a similar design. And then we've also been looking at your school assignment policy in zones 1 and 2, and which schools are part of the school choice and the school assignment plan. And we've been working with the NESDEC numbers of enrollment projections through 2023. And we are trying to work with the school department, trying to come up with a projected enrollment that that works for the Lowell Public School system. Now, just to talk briefly about the existing conditions throughout the schools. We gave the facilities subcommittee a much longer presentation, but tonight we'll just talk in summary form. We've sent 3 teams of architects throughout all of the school buildings, and we looked at your sites, the interior of the buildings, and the exterior of the buildings. And we used as you can see in the legends, a series of symbols, green meaning excellent in new condition, red meaning failed or not functional. And looking at all the different architectural systems throughout the buildings, we have determined that your best schools from an existing conditions facility issues are the McCullough, the Maury, the Pine Arts, and Stocklosa. And those that are in the less than poor condition would be Washington, Cardinal O'Connell, Green Adult Education, Malloy, and Riverside. We also sent our engineers into the buildings, structural, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and plumbing. And throughout their research through the buildings, they've determined that from an engineering standpoint, the schools that are in the best condition are Bailey, Maury, Pine Arts, and Stocklosa. And those that are in the most compromised position from an engineering standpoint are the high school buildings and Cardinal O'Connell. So these are the facilities that we think need the most attention when we move through this master plan. Now the next set of slides shows a map of Lowell and those schools as they relate to the neighborhoods. Again, the ones with a green circle are in the most excellent condition, and those with the red circle are in the poorest of conditions. And so as we move through the neighborhoods, we can see how those schools reflect to the constituency. But what's, I think, more important to consider are zones 1 and zone 2, where the students' school assignments are segregated in that way. In zone 1, we have 2 of your schools which are in the best condition, and the only school in zone 1 that's in what we consider poor condition would be the Adult Education Center. But over in zone 2, 4 of your schools are what we feel are in the poorest condition. Those include Washington, Riverside, O'Connell, and Moody. And the Pine Arts is the only in the green zone type school. So as we move through the master plan, those issues might be something that you might consider as you look at options for renovations and improvements. So the last part of what I'll be talking about are goals and values. As I said, back in August, we met with about 60 leaders from the school leadership team, and we talked about strengths and challenges, opportunities and goals for the Lowell public school system. And we went through a series of workshops in a sense that were either individual response or group or whole meeting response type activities. And through their work, they came up with a series of priority goals for the schools. Those included safety and security, correcting facility problems, correcting lack of equity across buildings and programs, 21st century collaborative and flexible spaces, rooms for special populations and subjects, and technology for 21st century. We then took the information that we got from that day, along with the information from our working group meetings, and then met with the leaders divided amongst 2 days, 30 people on one day and 30 on the other day. And it was mostly separated by assistant principals and principals plus other leadership. And we did a series of brainstorming sessions with them, with the result that they would vote using stickers like you see up here in the chart to create a series of goals that they were most interested in. And so the most critical factors that they found across those 2 days were the highest issue was grade configuration. Next was overcrowding, safety and security. The high school was talked about a lot on the first day in the sense that they were comparing maintaining the traditional Center City School as to show the pride of Lowell versus building a brand new school with athletic fields around it. On the first day, the leaders felt very confident that they wanted a new school on open fields with athletic fields all around it that reflected a secure environment for the students. But 2 days later, when we met with a different group, all of the focus was not on schools as much as the 2 sites. And all of those, we was predominant that they wanted the Center City site maintained as opposed to a new site. So I could see where the city this is a big question. Even your leaders were right on the line, 50-50 on which way to go. Other issues were parity of educational spaces in special ed and alternate schools, facility construction and ongoing maintenance, parity of educational spaces in the elementary and middle schools, parent and family interface, and a little bit about parking concerns. So using those critical factors, we worked with Jay on developing a draft set of goals and values for you to consider tonight. And they were divided amongst 2 factors, operational organization and physical space and features. Now, my hope is that we get in some healthy conversation about this, and if you want to tweak what you see, that's great. This is really a draft to get you started thinking about the goals and values and objectives for the master plan study, not necessarily for the Lowell Public School System to continue, but what you would like us to work on to get clarity on to provide information back to you. So I don't know if everyone has had these goals to look at, if I should walk through them. Would that walk through them? Okay. Number 1, use NESDEC's 10-year projected average enrollment for all schools plus 15 swing classes in grades 1 through 8. The reason that we added the 15 swing classes is to accommodate the bubble that goes through the school system, but also the fact that we don't want overcrowding to be the norm. So if we add a few swing classes across the system, this should help in the high point years as opposed to the average year. Number 2, provide for the preferred class sizes of 22 to 24 at elementary, 24 to 26 at middle, and under 25 at high school. Now, I did talk with Jay about this today, and there, you might want to consider these numbers a little bit more. This came from discussions with the working group, but also hearing from the high school teachers that the high school was often, classes were too large for the high school students. And when we looked at the MSBA guidelines, 23 students per classroom is the typical number that they use for their space guidelines. So I think that might want to consider that as you weigh in on that item. Number 3, provide for the preferred school strand sizes of 4 at elementary schools, 6 at middle schools, and 2 at Washington, Moody, and the K through 8 schools. 4, consider providing one or multiple early childhood centers for universal half-day pre-K in the Lowell school system. The teachers, the leaders, were very interested in bringing pre-K in as a universal, into the school system universally, because of their feelings that pre-kindergarten is the building block for the students as they move through the next 13 years of their school career. And so they felt that that would be important to build for that. Number 5, consider restructuring the current grade configuration to be K-5, 6-8, and 9-12 while maintaining 2 or more K-8 schools. This again was something that the teachers on the second day felt very strongly that 5th grade would do much better in the elementary school system, and that would set them off for middle school to be better when they get to the middle school. The second thing about this goal is that the teachers felt very strongly that K through 8 should be, if not just maintained, but maybe maximized. And if their feelings were that if there were 2 more K through 8 schools in the system, then administratively, if they were located closer than the 2 existing K-8 schools, they could be maintained more administratively easier for sharing facilities and sharing teachers. So that was an interesting consideration. Number 6, provide classroom space to allow more special needs students to remain in the Lowell school system. Number 7, consider sustainability and life cycle operating costs in all budgetary decisions. Now the reason that this is in here relating to the master plan is that as we develop the 10-year capital plan, there'll be decisions you'll need to make, whether you choose a system that is has a low first cost or a low life cycle cost. And so by putting in your goals and values this line, it will say that when we're developing cost estimates, we're looking at the difference between, for instance, vinyl composition tile VCT floor, which is a low first cost, versus linoleum flooring, which is a lower life cycle cost because of the maintenance is easier on linoleum. So things like that, systems, boilers, things like that. Number 8, provide a clear plan to resolve the immediate repair and maintenance needs in a timely manner. This was put in there because the leaders felt that even though you're going through a 10-year master plan, that they want to be sure that the maintenance issues are not forgotten at this time. And 9, educate the city on the need for ongoing investment in the current facilities. This is in there because, as many know, 20-year schools have almost met their midlife of their building existence because of the systems start to break down around 20 to 25 years. So the need to educate the city on that was important. Physical space and features. Number 1, family value in education is important. Schools should be designed to create a strong partnership with families. Number 2, provide more dedicated space for special education instruction at each neighborhood school. This, going along with the item on the first page, would allow the master planning to put in more special education spaces to accommodate those students so that the overcrowding in the regular classrooms is not as much of an issue. Number 3, consider multiple Lowell High School location options, including 2 similar schools under one roof. Number 4, retain Washington and Moody and upgrade to provide parity in amenities as compared to other neighborhood schools. Number 5, resolve classroom overcrowding while providing dedicated educational and support spaces at each school per current MSBA guidelines. Number 6, provide 21st century style flexible spaces for the development of critical thinking, creative problem solving, independent learning, and student and teacher collaboration at each school. Number 7, safety and security is a priority. Provide main offices at all front lobbies, security cameras, secure entry hardware, and functioning lockers. Number 8, upgrade and improve technology to meet 21st century educational needs, supporting a wireless network and an environment for one-to-one student devices for shared interactive content. If I were to talk about items 7 and 8, the reason that they're on here is, again, for capital planning costs, by understanding what type of technology, because 21st century technology covers a lot. We wanted to be specific so that we had something to price over the next few months. And number 9 is upgrade the alternative schools to meet the other neighborhood school standards. So that ends my portion of the presentation, and I guess I can open it up for questions.
Mr. Leary?
Just, this is part of our facility subcommittee, and the membership, we did go into almost a 2-hour presentation, and thank you for 2OMR for beginning this work that we requested of you in April and beginning it in May. As you can see, it's pretty in-depth. The meeting was more detailed, going through the mechanical, engineering, and other aspects of their programs and what they looked at. The goal of the facility subcommittee was to bring this to the full committee so we could begin the process of identifying goals. One of the strengths of the facility subcommittee that we wanted to bring to you was really, we want to make sure we have options so we can compare one item against another item and bring that before the public so we can have a real good, discussion. And I think as you saw one piece that seems to grab a lot of the headlines in the high school, you had a lot of differences of opinion, but that's based on not having these opinions drafted by OMR so you can compare one item versus the other item. So I think the goal of tonight at this point is really twofold. One, to begin a real draft report and have options. And to begin, number 2, to bring the community and the city council specifically into the picture to start having them involved in terms of what we want to do and how we want to proceed going forward. I think the process for the public is it's not just the high school, it's pre-K through 12. All are equally important, all are equally challenged. The options are creative. But we need this committee's support to begin that process. The key focus, again, is it's options. It's not just X, we're going to do this, look at it and how it looks. It's going to be comparing one item against another, and then having the public and the school committee, along with the city council and ultimately the city administration, making these decisions really sometime in the beginning of 2014. Obviously, at that point, costs will be a strong consideration. That'll be part of the equation as we begin to have that discussion. But I think at this point, as we have questions, which I think there should be a lot of questions tonight, the first thing we got to do before we leave tonight is really begin to have some draft goals developed so we can have additional movement on our aggressive timeline of having a full report for January of 2014. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank the OMR for putting this presentation together, and I think it's certainly needed to have professionals come to the table and to let us know perhaps which direction to go in. And again, I do appreciate that. You said something about newer schools have their midlife is somewhere in the vicinity of 20 years. Is that because of a normal wear and tear of the school, or is that because of a lack of should we say, a PM system that's not in place? In other words, the constant upkeep of the school?
There are a couple things. One item is that when you work with the Mass School Building Authority, they are looking to design buildings for 50 years. They know that a building does have a lifespan. In addition, you have all of the systems, mechanical systems, roofing systems, window systems. For instance, roofing systems, you probably don't get warranties for more than 25 or 30 years. Mechanical systems would start breaking down in this vicinity of time. You'll start to see that the efficiency of your boilers, the efficiency of your mechanical systems are all starting to run out. At the same time, you're looking now at energy efficiency issues, and even things like window systems. Windows built 20 years ago are totally a different set of variables in the glazing and the way they're built. than what they are now. So the buildings will start to typically see some changes at 20, 25 years.
Okay. It sounds like, from the presentation and what I have read, that there are certainly issues on, as my colleague pointed out, there's issues that we have to address on all three levels, the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You happened to mention on the high school level that there were two completely different schools of thought with two different working groups. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what those groups consisted of?
The first day that we were talking about the high school was with the assistant principals as well as additional leadership from around the school district.
Is that assistant principals from what you might call at the high school, like housemaster, or is that assistant principals throughout the system?
If I can jump in for a second, the two working groups we had were our leadership groups, so it's a kind of a cut in half group. The first day was K through 12 district administrators, as well as K through 12 assistant principals, housemasters, department chairs in the high school. The second day was K through 12 district administrators, primarily principals, and then also housemasters and department chairs from the high school. Because of the group and like the high school size, they're split between both days, just because of the size and not being able to have them all out of the building the same day.
So was it the latter group that thought it should stay the position that's in now at
Well, I would
Right.
say that there are a number of people from the first group that did want to keep it where it was, that were voting for, sort of felt strongly about the tradition and the pride of the building and where it's located. But that, the votes at the end of the day, I mean, those were the conversations. The votes at the end of the day were completely on the new site. So it may mean that those people changed their mind after hearing from the other people. Whereas the second day, they really were not interested in moving to a new site.
Okay, I see. Just one more question, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. I think this actually, through you to the superintendent. When we came up with a plan, we asked a company to take a look at a plan for upgrading our technology. And we certainly came back with a surprise. I think that all of us here were in our minds, were looking at somewhere in the vicinity of $3 or $3.5 million that we were willing to spend. And it sounded like somewhere along the line there was some miscommunication or a lack of communication, because the company came in with a plan for $26 million, which obviously we couldn't afford. So I'm wondering on this here, do we have different levels? Are we going to have different levels of financial options as far as the plans are concerned? Did we address that? Because once again, I don't want to fall into the same situation. We're sitting down, and I realize that we're trying to get as much money from the state, but I also, to fix up our schools, but I also want to, caution all of us, and is the fact that, we are certainly running into financial problems. We have this group here has seen financial woes for many, many years, and I just want to make sure that we can address our problems. There's no doubt about that. I think we need to address them, but I think we have to be realistic as far as the financial part of it is too. We have to keep that in mind, because I'm sure we're not looking at an unlimited pot of money. Madam Superintendent?
In the planning pieces, we haven't gotten to any of the budgetary components. But within the planning, realistic outcomes over time is surely part of what's going to happen. Like I said, we're at these initial findings, but to operationalize any plan, realistic financial pieces are going to be a very important part, and thus getting back to what Mr. Leary's talking about, making sure the city's involved, making sure we get input. This is an opportunity, and this committee has really given this administration tools to look deeply a number of times. And so, yes, of course, the implications have to be that way. And, you know, our next step, getting back to even the technology plan, is 20-something million anywhere is substantial in any district. But that needs to go back to the planning over time. So thus, what's the next stage for that particular piece? So, yes, of course, the budgetary pieces have to become part of the planning and what's doable. We just haven't gotten there yet, and I'll ask if there's any more clarification that I'm missing, please add.
Well, see, I was just bringing that up as a loose parallel here, or comparison, that we have to be aware of that too. Thank you.
I could add to that when we move into the master plan options, we will be bringing a number of solutions with we'll compare them from pros and cons, we'll compare them from a square footage standpoint, from how it relates to the MSBA guidelines, and from a cost standpoint, so that when decisions are being made, you have those, all that analysis to weigh in.
Right, thank you, I appreciate that. That certainly makes sense, thank you.
Ms. Rosikowicz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to thank you all. This was a fantastic presentation, and it certainly gave me a refreshing view of all of our buildings in the district, and certainly lent itself to strategizing how we can reprogram how we do business and deliver services to our customers, our kids, our families. And, you know, I in my time on this committee, I feel like at times, you know, when it comes to capital planning and, you know, for instance, in the case of, you know, we have bubbles in our kindergarten classes, it feels like we're putting Band-Aid solutions on everything, and I feel that this is just the beginning of the process where we rip all those Band-Aids off and really start new, and look forward to see and really vision how this district will look in 10 years. So my other question, or perhaps it's an observation plus a question, jumping off of what Mr. Conway had mentioned in terms of prioritization, you know, certainly some of our buildings have higher needs, a higher level of needs versus others, and I wonder how does that jive with our current capital planning already in place, and are we able to, once we've prioritized those needs that have surfaced through this analysis, will we be able to go back and revise that capital planning process and the one that that report that we filed with the city?
On that note, with regard to the capital plan, last year when we put the capital plan together, we funded, I believe, $7 or $8 million worth of initial projects. They were the projects that had kind of been on the back burner for a number of years that we weren't really able to fund. So we funded them in kind of one fell swoop, and we tried to get caught up to where we probably should have been over the last 5 years or so. This is really going to become a living document, and this will become our capital plan for the next 10 years. We annually file with the city our capital plan. So then OMR's recommendations and what the committee ultimately votes on will become kind of our living capital plan. So this will take the place in January, February, when we go to the city council to submit our capital plan for 15. This will actually be the document. We'll have them working with us to prioritize the different projects to help us with the phasing of the projects over the 10-year period. This will take the place of our existing document.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, OMR, and the superintendent and Mr. Lang for going through this process. As Mr. Leary said, the subcommittee met for about 2 hours, and we went through a much lengthier slideshow. We actually spoke with a number of different engineers from different fields, and I just think that the public should be aware that we began this process months ago, and we're taking it very, very seriously. And the fact that we're addressing or hoping to address all of our schools throughout the district, from pre-K to 12, and including also our adult education center. And as you can see from the slides, we have schools that are in much worse shape than the high school itself. So it's a process that I was happy to be a part of on the subcommittee, and I think it's a big issue for the city. But as actually Mr. Lang just mentioned, this is going to be our capital plan for 10 years. This is a process that is long overdue. But once we are able to use this plan to ask for funding and to work with the MSBA and to work with the city, really, then we'll be able to address many, many issues that will affect every person in the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary and then Ms. Scott.
Just quickly, I think and Mr. Gignick said a lot of it, but basically comes down to why we had the motion to do this was because we had a lot of issues going on, and because our schools are growing old, because we all as a body recognize the science labs were not sufficient to meet the needs today, not even yesterday, and the facility needed repair. And in order to be, what we need to be to compete, this is where this motion derived from. I think the key here, though, is what OMR is saying. These are options. And I think building in the cost factor, building in different ways of looking at it, folks will take a real look at it as opposed to, gee, I think we should have K through 5 forever. Maybe we should have K through 4. Maybe looking at those two options competing is a good way to make and looking at the cost, what it will take to bring it into reality is what we need for ourselves and for the public. And I think that's a good start, and I think this committee has shown leadership doing that. Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a few questions about the or comments on the goals that were listed. You had brought up the K through 8 schools, and you did say that there was some desire from the people in the group to increase that number?
Yes.
Okay. Would we be able to find out some information maybe from the superintendent about things like academic achievement in K through 8s and transition to middle school and just more information about how she feels about the addition of K through 8 schools? The other comment that I had was there was the Washington and the Moody School continuing with those schools. And I'm just curious as far as like a cost type analysis to have such small school sizes versus a larger school, a combined school. And then my other question, I believe would be for Mr. Lang, but as far as the high school goes, with an old site versus a new site type plan, will some of that decision be made by the school building authority about what they're willing to finance? And if you could explain that a little bit.
Sure. Let me address your first question first while I have it on my mind. Oh no, I forgot it. Oh, the Moody and the Washington School, sorry. From a cost perspective, as far as budget's concerned, they actually net out to about the equivalent of a 4-strand elementary school. If you think about the teaching size and the classroom ratios, they're half of our other schools. They share an administration. They only have one, they each have a principal, but they don't have an assistant principal, where other buildings would have 2. So they're actually very comparable. Those buildings as well, families just love. Families love those schools. There's always a high demand for both schools. A lot of the parents that enroll their children there, that really is their first or second choice. Folks aren't going there kind of by default. We really have an active parent group and community that support those schools. And I think that rang loud and clear, too, with both visioning sessions, that the building teachers and administrators really like that smaller school model. So that was something we want to just continue to look at in the mix of things. The K-8 model, which was kind of your first question, it's just to kind of bring back scenarios at this point. I think in the room there were some mixed opinions. The parents seem to love the K-8 model. It is difficult administratively to staff. You do have positive transitions because you don't have a big transition issue from 4th grade going to 5th because kids are within the building. But going to high school from 8th to 9th grade, what we have to look at is you've got students that are going from a 2-strand school into a giant freshman academy. How do they compare coming out of a 2-strand school to a 6-strand middle school? So there's pros and cons both ways, but that's something we're going to look at as part of this study. With regard to the high school, really, I think what we're seeking at this point is just to keep kind of all options open. And what the MSBA makes you do, and we're not even at that juncture yet, but if we entertain doing any kind of a building plan, whether it's a renovation, a new building, downtown, off-site, whatever it ends up being, they make you go through a feasibility phase and really look at all options. And they want to know, what would it cost to produce the ideal program at the current location? What would the cost be off-site? They may say, if one option is greater than the other, that, we'll support option A and we'll contribute X number of dollars. If you choose to do option B, it's going to cost you more money. We're still going to cap our contribution at what we would have given for A, and then it really becomes kind of a community issue to see if the community wants to give that offsetting funding. But we're at the stage right now, we're even more preliminary than the MSBA stage, where I think we really just want to keep kind of all options open and just have OMR present us with a myriad of different options to really consider when it comes to all of our K-12 programming. And we're not committing to anything at this point, but at some point when we have our capital plan, the last phase of the OMR work is actually for them to work with us and the MSBA around statement of interests for the different projects that we determine should receive priority. And at that point in time, we'll engage in a conversation with the MSBA about our priorities, what we would like to see for Lowell, and they actually come out and work with the community to determine, what really does make most fiscal sense for them, financial sense for the community, and then programmatically also. It's a long conversation that's going to take years to really kind of develop and work through. And I think at this stage of the game, with all of these different recommendations, we're just saying, let's look at everything, let's keep our options open, and allow OMR to go back and actually do some work to bring us a number of different scenarios and proposals to consider.
Ms. Scott and then Ms.
I'm
Ms.
sorry,
Martin.
just one more comment. The only other concern that really stood out to me was the removal of the preschool into a separate location, which I agree with that, actually. But the K through 5 strand, I just wasn't sure space-wise how we were going to add. There's only one preschool in some schools, and there's none in some other schools. So we'd be pulling out one classroom, replacing it with 5th grade, and then also adding in special ed classrooms. So I'm just not sure about the feasibility of space-wise how that would work, but thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. I'll add my thanks and appreciation for the work that's been done. I was unable to attend the subcommittee, so going from the report that we received and then also tonight's presentation, I appreciate really the level of information that's being shared and the scope of what this really proposes to be. As we go through this process, I am struck by the luxury of it. That to have the opportunity to look at our school buildings in this way is something that this committee in this district has not had even the faintest hope of being able to do over the last few years. The idea that we're putting in place a very thoughtful, well-considered plan is exactly the job we should be doing. So it's very exciting to be at the beginning of this process. A lot of the goals, I think, certainly people in this room, more importantly, people outside this room, will have a lot of opinions and ideas to share. So I think we have to be clear that this is the very beginning of a very long process. And I think we'll be addressing a lot of the concerns, again, that came up with this committee, with the staff who were involved over the course of time. But I really do think it's a very auspicious beginning. And the idea that we're looking at, this isn't a capital plan in the sense of, we need to paint hallways and things like that. All that is very important. We need to fix bubblers to keep Mr. Leary happy. All very important. But this is, profoundly broad, and the idea that we are using our goals and our dreams for our community and what education will look like to drive our physical plant is the way the world should be. And it's, it'll be a long trip to get there, but I think that this is, again, a great beginning. And I think that it will really be offering a shape to the work we do for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's an exciting time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lang?
Thank you. The only thing I would like to recommend to the committee to tweak a little bit as we adopt the kind of provisional operating goals for OMR's work is when you look at the preferred class size that we're going to be building to at the elementary and middle school level, I'm going to suggest, after some dialogue and reflection on this, because we do want to, they're going to be working on averages and to take into consideration the highs and lows. I'd like to ask that the preferred class levels go from 20, then right now we said 22 to 24 at the elementary level. If we back that down to 20 to 22, just to allow a little more flexibility on the higher end. And then the middle school program at 24 to 26, I would say we should ask them to do the projection from 22 to 24. The high school was saying out of 25, I think, and the SBA guideline is 23. I think that's reasonable. But I think if we just made those two small adjustments, it might allow us a little more wiggle room in the higher than average years. And I'd rather have, as we've gone through this process, I'd rather have a little more room than less room, particularly if the SBA, if we get into a dialogue with them, if they will support a lower class size. So I would make those two modifications as a recommendation, and then ask the committee to endorse these goals so that OMR can continue with their work.
Ms. Martin and Mr. Leary.
Thank you very much. So the listing of these kind of preliminary goals that we're looking for an endorsement for tonight, I would, again, I wasn't at the subcommittee, so that's my failing. There are some that I do have some concerns about. I mean, you actually picked up on one, the whole idea of wanting to pull back that class size when we recognize what our real goal should be. I think I'd certainly support that. So I would request perhaps that we have, I don't want to hold things up, so, I don't know if the facility subcommittee has a plan moving forward, and I recognize that the goals we approve tonight can change, and, so there's other opportunities, and if that would delay our process, I don't want to do that, but I do feel like there are some goals within this list that warrant some additional conversation just within the committee before we even put them out to the public.
No, and I
Lee.
think, Ms. Martin, absolutely, and I think this is really to begin the draft process and then start bringing it before the community to have real, objective, here's what we really want. And obviously, at the end of it is how does the, the state tie into the finance piecing? I know there's some ambitious changes. If you go from a K to 5 to K to 4, it might sound really good, but how would you financially do that? And these are hurdles I think we need to, at the beginning part, have that discussion. And if it's not reality, or if the majority of folks don't want to do it, then we can pull that apart. And if something evolves in a different area, then so be it. But I think this is a good way to begin that process. I think you'll start having meaningful meetings with everyone. And I think this is a good kickoff. So your point's exactly what the subcommittee was envisioning as we came here tonight. And I'd like to make it in the form of a motion to support both the operational goals, organizational goals, as well as the physical goals, as amended by Mr. Lang, bring down the student size as a form of a motion to begin the draft process, knowing full well that this could very well change completely going forward in a different direction based on a variety of different variables as we begin that discussion.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin, and then
Could I
Mr.
offer,
Kignac.
as I second, could I offer a friendly amendment? If we could include in that the planning strategy, the implementation strategy of this information gathering that we'd be receiving back in our, we're voting to approve these operational and the goals that are being presented, and that what we'll get then is the kind of meeting schedule, the public meeting schedule, so that we'll get all of that information at the next convening, I would hope, of the finance subcommittee. And that's my motion. I think that was pretty succinct.
Yep.
Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before we take a vote, I think we have a registered speaker.
We do, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to. Mr. George DeLuca?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the school committee.
If you just please state your name, name and address for the record.
Yes, George DeLuca, 463 Merrimack Street. Again, thank you to the school committee and particularly the facilities committee as well, and the architect OMR from West Acton. And you know, I have to say, my background's in project management, and I have worked on public facilities projects, including schools and the entire physical plant of a town, as well as for the city of Boston on all kinds of different projects down there. And I have to congratulate you all for doing this right, and I have to concur with what school committee woman Connie Martin just said. I mean, you pretty much said everything that I'm feeling in terms of the planning. You know what you're doing, which is really strange feeling to me here in Lowell, that we're actually starting at a step one, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to bring everyone into the loop and let everyone discuss the effects of the decision-making on their lives, particularly the students and the parents and the community, the people out in the neighborhoods. That is what makes me so relieved. And I want to make sure that the community understands how groundbreaking, I guess, or even staggering this process is, this opportunity that we all have now to actually participate in the decision-making going forward on all 29 schools, K to 12, throughout the city. Everyone is affected. And what happens with the high school, which is the most complicated question of all, is going to affect all 106,000 people that live in the city and shouldn't be decided by a group or one individual or what have you. And I want to thank specifically Kim Scott for assuring me that this is going to be a community-oriented process. And I know that you all feel the same way, and I can tell that. And I feel really confident with the leadership, and Jay Lang is just terrific in terms of his understanding of how this all goes and his ability to explain so that any layperson could actually understand what we're doing and where we're going. I do have maybe one or two questions, perhaps for the architect. In terms of, I mean, I've engaged in existing condition studies, which is the perfect thing to do, is you assess the conditions of all the schools. Has there been an estimator that's been engaged to actually assign numbers to what you found?
Yes, we are working with an estimator right now, and we are developing baseline repair costs. So if we were to take all of the existing conditions assessments that we have put together, what would be the baseline cost of repairing these buildings? And then we will compare that with each of these 29 school options. And so then you'll have an idea of that kind of comparison. And then for the capital plan, the cost estimator will give us the numbers for that.
That's great, because obviously that's what helps when you start talking about prioritization and what we can do and what's nice to have that maybe we're not going to be able to do. But you get the whole picture. You get a good thumbnail across the board as to how this is going to go down over the next 10 years. So again, congratulations. I appreciate your efforts on this. We'll definitely stay in tune, and we'll definitely be attending the forums as they become available and participating in that as well. And again, I want to make sure that all of the community understands that now is the time to start thinking like this. I mean, if you have a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, there's a good chance that this high school situation is going to be envisioned for you so that you can make a decision over the next couple of years as to what you want to do with your life. You know, if it's going to be this way, then maybe I'm going to plan my life differently. So it's really important, I think, that the community pay attention and participate. And I know that they know how important that is. And again, I was very heartwarmed coming here tonight to see all of these students up to, I believe, what is it, K to 8, and just to see the students of Lowell. This is the students of Lowell in this room among all of you leaders. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I appreciate having the opportunity to experience that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If Mr. Conway would please take the chair, I just have a few comments.
Mayor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate all the work that's been done into this comprehensive assessment and the work that certainly the administration has done. When I first joined the school committee, I think there wasn't a very good understanding on the city side of things, on the city council side of things, of what the needs were in the school department. But I think the committee here has done a very good job of communicating that to the city council in addressing a number of really maintenance issues throughout these last 2 years, but also in working with the city on the Amoresco projects, which has really been quite an investment in the schools, in energy efficiency, and millions of dollars really in updating our schools. The capital plan is a complicated thing for the school to be able to really integrate all of its needs with the city needs. You know, it's not just about all of these schools that are listed. We had a figure of 26 million just for technology. We're looking at many hundreds of millions of dollars, really, particularly if you're looking at building a new high school. To clarify, I think a question was raised by Ms. Scott on the MSBA reimbursement of the high school. I think when you look at this assessment here, you can see very clearly that despite the issues that we've seen at the high school, it's really rated a 1 and a 2. The 1980 building is rated a 2, and the older building is rated a 1 according to the MSBA. And so the likelihood of us being able to receive any kind of reimbursement for those for a complete renovation is actually low. So I think that's important to recognize in this discussion. But despite that, the committee has been willing to look at other ways to really renovate that school with the Science Lab initiative and working into it the HVAC systems so that we might be able to get some kind of reimbursement in the order of 75% from the MSBA. So I think I really just want to say that you know, despite the other needs in the city, whether it be police, fire, all kinds of facility needs, that this will be a multi-year effort. There's no way you can work away at this in just a couple of years. It'll be a multi-year effort, and I do expect it to be a participatory process, both here on the school committee and in communicating what the learning objectives are, the learning goals of the district, and how that will guide our facility needs, what the actual conditions of the facility will guide our needs, all the data on enrollment, how that those projections, hopefully updated, will actually guide our facility needs. But I do appreciate the work that this committee has done over the last 2 years, which has been significant, to ensure that the facilities in the next 10, 20 years really adequately meet the learning of our students. And I just wanted to say I was pleased and very proud of that work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Leary, second by Ms. Kristen Ross-Sikowicz. Roll call.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. And thank you for OMR for the presentation. And next we have under the minutes, we have the Facilities Subcommittee.
Just, I think that was the subcommittee meeting, Mayor. I
You
make that
offer
as
a
a motion
motion?
report of progress.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, under the minutes, we have approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, September 18th, 2013 for acceptance. Motion to accept and place on file, Ms. Ms. Rosikwich, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Under permission to enter, we have permission to enter for October 2nd, 2013. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Early Childhood Associates Incorporated in the amount of $53,950 to amend the existing contract to provide continuation of training on the Common Core Standards-Based Curriculum and Assessment to administrators, early childhood teachers, and staff to develop a common language around the birth through grade 3 alignment grant and change the end date of the contract to August 31st, 2014. Funding will be provided by the Birth Through Grade 3 Alignment Grant. To Amy Young in the amount of $16,000 to provide special education transportation services in accordance with an individual education plan. Funding will be provided by the school department budget, special education transportation. To United Teen Equality Center Incorporated in the amount of $275,000 to provide an alternative to program ADP that will serve 30 students in grades 10 through 12 who require a long-term alternative education setting, including the integration of special education students with non-emotional IEPs. Funding provided by the school department, local budget, and Mass Grad grant.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question for the superintendent. How much money did we allocate for UTEC last year?
The combination of that particular fund is $200,000 from the budget, the approved budget, 2014 budget, and $75,000 from the grant
Okay.
process, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rosikwich.
I just had a quick question on our allocation to UTEC, and I certainly recognize the great work that they do, but what are their outcomes? I mean, I know that they're at capacity in terms of the number of students that they take in, but what kind of outcomes are we seeing? Is everyone who's entering obtaining a GED? What are we actually purchasing?
I'm going to use last year's data, and I'll ask Ms. Durkin if there is any more current. I do have an upcoming meeting for this year. But last year, as a result of the different entry times, I believe that we graduated 32 students from the ADP program. So these were children who, in fact, had perhaps already dropped out, re-entered school through the UTEC program, and I believe that that increase was 32. And again, they keep up to 30 people at any given time, but with their transition and whatever students were left there, there was, according to my recollection, 32 kids that graduated with a Lowell High diploma through that program.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. So looking at the number, we're looking at $75,000 that came through this Mass Grad grant. Could you tell me what that changes? I mean, my understanding is as I recall, $200,000 paid for that 30 student, that same kind of number last year. So what improvements or increases do we expect with the additional 75? What was the grant directed at?
The grant over time, and I believe, if I recall, our historian, Ms. Murphy, is not with us, so I'm going to see if I can recall. But I remember at one point when the grant first came in, it was a planning grant, there was $125,000, and it was to get the program started. And then now it's the implementation grant. The remainder of this grant is $75,000. So at the end of the year, we'll continue to have the $200,000. I am meeting, as well as with Ms. Durkin, Assistant Superintendent Durkin, to how are we going to get other funding. There are grants that are also secured by UTEC themselves. And so to get to $200,000 is the local budget contribution, but the $75,000 will continue this year. After that, we will have to look at how we would continue funding. It is not the only money goes to the program. There are in-kind funds, and I suggest that we look at it more detail at perhaps a student support service to get maybe an update on this. There are other in-kind funds that are contributed through UTEC for the overall program. So that's my recollection. But I do know that that $75,000, I believe this is the final year of that grant that was secured by the UTEC and the high school.
I think it makes sense for us to look more in depth. That would be great. It would be great to have the representatives come and speak with us. That would be awesome. And I think, yeah, it would be, I think, extremely helpful, especially as we're, spending more and more time on these kind of alternative programs that give students different and better options. I think it would be, super to kind of look at it in that larger context and be able to, make some decisions there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'd entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? 7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have memorials. Joyce Callery Gilligan, mother of Carrie Carolyn, tutor at the Markham School. Ann E. Cullen, a retired Morey School teacher. And Mr. James F. Jim Malloy, a retired Lowell High School teacher. If you please rise in a moment's silence in darkened chambers. Next, we have under motions, first motion by Kristen Ross Sikowicz, request the superintendent develop with staff a comprehensive outreach strategy to provide information about the Latin Lyceum program at the high school to middle school children and their parents, with the primary intent of providing more and readily accessible information to our families and allowing families to set goals with their children with regard to testing entry into the Lowell High School Latin Lyceum. Seconded by Ms. Scott. Ms. Ross Sikowicz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion comes about as a result of discussions held in past subcommittee meetings and more recently based on search data that was generated on my own website. In other school districts, for those with Lyceum programs, the planning and goal setting for children and their families for entry and testing and entry into the Latin Lyceum programs tend to start around the 5th and 6th grade. And so I'm thinking that our strategies should certainly include making more information available about our Lyceum, about the standards, preparation materials for testing, and obviously testing information. I was pleased to find last week that my own 8th grader, and as I understand, every 8th grader in the district was sent home a notice from the high school advising our families that there were 2 testing dates that were coming up in November. And as I understand it, that's not been past practice. So I'm really pleased to see that happening already. So my hope is that we are able to expand this program and offer it to many, many more talented children in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent motion. To the superintendent, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent, are we still visiting, the 8th grade still visiting the high school to take a look at the various programs and also talk about the Latin Lyceum, and not just the Latin Lyceum, but other programs too?
Yes, Mr. Conway. The very first high school option that is presented to our students is Lowell High School. And so there's lots of outreach that's going on. There's a plan internally at the high school to make sure the outreach to the parochial schools is most definitely continued and actually expanded. And so, yes, there's a vision to first place we go is our own middle schools and the city schools to be coming to Lowell High School. They do visits by school, and there's visits to the schools also, so yes.
I think it's important to take a look, as Ms. Kristen Ross Sikowicz has said, take a look at some strategies, constantly take a look and increase our strategies. I would certainly assume that our guidance counselors would be informing the students, especially high-achieving students, as they were filling out their information for the high school. Now, Madam Superintendent, UMass Lowell used to have what we called a leadership, and during that time, let's say, for example, the guidance counselors would have an opportunity. Middle school guidance counselors would have an opportunity to meet with the high school guidance counselors, and they would be able to converse and let each other know what is being done and what needs to be improved. Are we still doing that now?
Yes, and I will ask Ms. Durkin if it has changed recently, but middle school and high school counselors have met together vertically. They've met different times during the year, but I believe that it's going to be a middle school through high school plan, but I'll ask Ms. Durkin if she has any additional information.
Thank you, Superintendent Franco. Yes, the plans are in place. Our counselors met once this month. It was our middle school counselors. My observation was we're missing our high school counselors. So I'm in communication with the student support coordinator at Lowell High School to plan future events where both counselors from the middle school level as well as the high school level. I know the importance of that, having been at the high school, that we communicate about our students, about our course content, preparing our students for the work that they need to do. So we are going to be putting together a full year calendar that will support that work.
Well, I'm glad we're taking a look at that, because I think for a while, I think we were tending to work in, should we say, isolation. And I think that when we get the three levels together, the elementary and the middle school and the high school, you can now see, and not just on the Latin Lyceum, but anything, whether it's attendance, truancy, whatever it may be, curriculum, that all three levels can communicate, and I think it's extremely important that we bring that back, and to the point where I think it was extremely important for the entire system, and certainly helped our students, and helped our staff understand what was coming up and what they needed to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Ms. Kristen Rosikowicz, request the superintendent work with the Information Technology Department to provide an online mechanism to apply for school bus passes through the public schools website. Seconded by Ms. Scott. Ms. Rosikowicz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion's self-explanatory, obviously, but there are other districts that do allow parents, families to file for their, register for their bus passes online, and their bus passes are actually emailed to them. I do know, having spoken with various school personnel, the labor that goes into compiling over 13,000 bus passes every year. So I see this as a means of streamlining that and easing that burden, and obviously saving cost when it comes to allocating personnel to actually undertake that humongous undertaking. And also, and far more importantly, it's far more amenable and certainly friendly to our parents. They certainly have access to the bus passes right away, and if there are any issues, it can be addressed immediately rather than addressed, 2-3 days out or 5 days out, whatever the case may be. And it also serves to provide a firmer connection to those families of ours that are a little bit more transient. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Ms. Kim Scott. Request the superintendent implement a dropout prevention task force to provide input on the development of our dropout prevention plan. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am asking for a task force to be formed so that we can add a new set of eyes to a longstanding problem. While our dropout rates have fallen in the district, they are still too high, well, other than that little blip that we had there with reporting. By forming the task force, I'd like us to be able to acknowledge that this isn't just an issue for the school district, that this is an issue for the entire community. And I'd like to see included in the task force members of the school staff, city officials, community members, and members of the business community to help provide research and analyze Lowell's dropout rate, what's working for Lowell, what's not working, and to provide us with some analysis of best practices that have happened in other districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Mr. Conway?
Just very quickly on this, this is something that I know that Ms. Durkin will certainly agree with. The fact is that the House Masters and the administration would meet every week and take a look at this particular problem. It's a problem that, believe me, they work on every single week. They try to improve it. They're constantly trying to come up with some ideas. And it's not just, it is a team effort right now. And again, I think it's good to explore perhaps other alternatives, because you do have the clerks that help out. You've got the house masters. You've got, calls that are being made, letters that are being sent out, and there's a constant vigil of trying to change things around, and it's not easy. It really isn't. And I think that one of the things, and I know some of my colleagues are probably very sick and tired of hearing me say this, but the program that I put into place, the Laptops for Lowell, it worked. It was successful. It helped truancy and it helped cutting. The numbers spoke for themselves. And yet, in the last headmaster eliminated that particular national program, which I'd like to see something like this come back. And again, I think that when people come up with ideas, we need to encourage them. I think a lot of the things that we do, many times it borders on punitive. And I think that when you start taking a look at possibilities of incentives, I think incentives can be very important. So when you take a look at that task force, let's throw out some incentives, something positive too, that can help out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary and then Ms. Scott.
Just quick, I think one thing that was an excellent motion made back a couple months ago by Mr. Gignac and the mayor regarding looking at like a 5-year high school, and I'm probably killing the motion in terms of the correct verbiage, but that I think is another area, because a lot of these kids at the bottom end are not going to compete for the laptop. All right, that's just reality. We need to really focus on some of these folks. And I'd like to see that motion come forward in terms of, is that even reality? Is it not reality? What are the offshoots that could come out of that motion? Because a lot of us who have sat down, and Mr. Conway's correct, we've all talked to the house masters. They've come up with excellent ideas, but one of the biggest problems we have is there's a lot of young folks who don't have the supports at home, have to work. They have other dynamics that, that are just so challenging that they need assistance to meet the reality of their life so they can get a quality education, so they can get into Middlesex Community College, or even get in the military for that matter. So I think we need to get really aggressive with that motion, at least take a look at that, whether or not that's real, what does the committee need to do to back that up if it is real, if it is something that can be effective. Because this is a motion that we have time and time again, and the reason we have it is because we're not being as successful as we need to be. But we need to be different, and I think that motion might be the catalyst to being different. Thank you.
Ms. Durkin and then Ms. Scott.
Thank you for bringing that forward. I just want the committee to know that at present, the Office of Student Support Services has convened a district-wide team to begin looking at attendance, because we do know that attendance is a barrier for our students as far as getting their academic credits. It's also a barrier starting at the early age of 4, and 5. When we look at our data across the board, these patterns begin very young, and so our intervention plans can't only be at the high school level, so we're looking cross-district right now to really look very carefully at what we're doing and try and put in systemic operations to help the schools, help the families, help the kids.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with Mr. Leary. The motion that was made by Mr. Gignac and Mr. Murphy will certainly go a long way, I believe, in helping the dropout situation. My vision for this task force was actually a little bit further back than that, as far as, looking at the preventative measures. We've heard from staff recently, if children can't read by 3rd grade, increased chance of dropping out. If they can't do their ABCs by kindergarten, increased chance of dropping out. We've all heard the truancy issues going on in the middle schools recently. So I was really just thinking of tying in community partners, tying in maybe someone from the Attorney General's office, as far as the CHINS situation goes. So that was my vision for the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Mr. James Leary, request the superintendent prepare a report indicating the costs and programs of students in out-of-district placements to ascertain if it would be financially beneficial to establish in-district programs that would meet or exceed the level of services currently being provided to these districts, to these students outside the district. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. Mr. Leary.
It speaks for itself. We really need to prepare for the budget, and we need to begin now because you can't do this in March. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good motion. A few months back, the Student Support Services Office and the Special Education Department came forward with a recommendation to change how they did some things and make it in-house rather than spending the money to do things externally. I think that was a great creative way, something that we can be looking at with this motion, because we do have great talented people here that are willing to do the work. And as we talk about whenever we do these, whenever we send a different child out of district, we look at the dollar amount and it's crazy. And we see the funding from the state decreasing in that area. So I think this is a good motion. I know we have the right people in the city to do that work, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I certainly concur. I think that because of the size and the scope of our district, we're really uniquely qualified and suited to take on these kind of larger challenges. Certainly, over the course of time, the Lowell Public Schools have created these types of specialty programs that have allowed us to keep our students here in the district. It also, speaks to the least restrictive environment goal that is, set up in every IEP, every special ed situation. With the history of having specialized programming for students who are hard of hearing, we've had programs in the past for students who were visually impaired. And currently now we know between our alternative programs, particularly I'm thinking of the ones at the LeBlanc, we've really been able to craft programs that allow us to give students the best education possible right here in their home district. The next level of that, which I know Mr. Leary is well aware and that would be great to be included in this, is the whole concept that in addition to providing our students with those increased educational options, we serve as a hub for the entire Merrimack Valley. And there's an opportunity then to be able to create, best practice institutions for specialized programming that then all of our surrounding communities can take advantage of. They're paying that same out of district tuition. We can offer them a more economical solution with a site closer to home. They're not spending money, much like we are, on outrageous transportation costs, which as I look at special ed, time for a child in a classroom we can all support. Time, traveling on a bus to and from is a lot less easy to get excited about. But this could be, again, an opportunity where we provide that high level of service for our own, and then we're really serving our greater community, and it becomes, an income generator. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Mr. James Leary. Request the superintendent provide a report to the school committee on the status of technology in each school throughout the system. The report should include existing problems, recommendations to resolve the existing problems, and recommendations for the next phase of technology placements. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. Mr. Leary.
It's key that we recognize we put a significant sum of money into technology. Not every issue is resolved by a long shot. I think tonight we had a mention of a program that said we need $26 million for our technology. I would opine that's probably an accurate number. Reality, we're not going to get there, but we need to know where these deficiencies are so we can always continue to raise our expectations. Some of the things that don't cost a lot of money are sharing best practices from one school to the next. Are we getting the training in every single school? Where are those deficiencies? Where are they occurring? Some of the schools have the Moby, for example, the Lincoln, I think the Bailey, and 50/50 the Riley. Are they getting the services that they need? Because most other schools have different types of technology. I think it's a good time to have that report, really take a look at where we're deficient and not be afraid of that, because we're not going to be as good as we want to be. And I think if we continually be honest with that, develop an action plan to try to get there, then I think we're going to be in a much better position. This committee put a lot of dollars into it. I think it's a great thing that this committee took that initiative, but I think we now need to take a look at an honest look at a year later. We put people in place. Are they effective? Are we holding them accountable to certain measurements? Do they have measurements? We put certain equipment in place. How is that working? Knowing full well we were nowhere near where we needed to be. So I think it's a good time to take a look at that. I know it's a very difficult report to put together, and there won't always be, we won't always be happy with what we see, but I think we need to understand that so we as a committee can start putting, actions in place to address those needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have subcommittee reports. We have the report of the Community Partnership Subcommittee and approval of the minutes of the meeting Wednesday, September 18, 2013. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that, first of all, before I go into the report, there's some very unique partnerships that were created, and they would not be created unless we had the support of the entire school committee on these. It was extremely important that they really stepped up to the plate and helped out with all of them. We had a meeting on September 18th, and a Community Partnership Subcommittee, and myself was there, Connie Martin, Kristen Ross-Sikowicz, and other members, Mayor Patrick Murphy, James Leary, Robert Gignac, and Kim Scott. And from central office, we had Jean Franco, and we had Claire Abrams, Assistant Superintendent, and Claire Abrams, I want to thank you for putting the report together. Did another marvelous job. Thank you. Also present was Susan Lynn, who was the Director of Grants and Partnerships Development, and other individuals that were there. Brian Martin, Lowell High School Headmaster, Kendall Wallace, the Lowell Sun Chairman of the Board, and Stephen Jonkers, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, was Board President. We talked about a number of things, partnerships, and just very briefly, we talked about 3 partnerships, and then we went into the 4th one in a little bit more detail. The first one was the distracted driving partnerships that has been developed with the Massachusetts Association of Trial Attorneys, and I think it's something that's extremely important. And this program was actually started by a gentleman named Joel Feynman, who he lost his daughter to a distracted driver when she was 21 years old. And he made it his mission to fight against the distracted drivers. And we were fortunate enough to have a few attorneys come up to help out on this. And one of them is the Elizabeth Conway, and also the Massachusetts Trial Association president, was Tim Kelleher, attorney Tim Kelleher. They talked with the seniors about the distracted driving. This committee would like to see expanded and go into the rest of the grade level in the high school, and they were very excited about it, and they are certainly going to continue on with it. The next updated partnership came out of the sports-themed schools, which we've talked about numerous times over the last few years, and finally we've got some real progress here. And I just want to say that it's a program that we started off with a recommendation from the superintendent. We'd start off with 3 particular sports that we tried to weave into the curriculum. One of them was the wrestling, and that was headed up by Coach Sheehan, and that's now in a number of different schools. The other one is Coach Lisa Cada, field hockey, and I believe there was something like 80 or 100 sticks that have been donated and distributed to different schools in our system. Once again, this is an excellent opportunity for our students to experience sports at a much younger age, which I think is extremely important. And the other particular situation we had in the sports was tennis, and that was, as I've said before, that was spawned by Dennis Kruziak, who was the coach, is no longer with us, and Coach Jennifer Kerry was the girls' coach, and myself, and we sat down, we talked about this, and we talked about introducing sport, giving the kids an opportunity in the city of Lowell, an earlier start to a completely different type of situation. And we were fortunate enough that Coach Kerry brought the U.S. Tennis Association, and that's our partnership, and it's incredible to think that we received 450 tennis rackets that was donated by the U.S. Tennis Association and all the equipment that goes with it to help out. I think this is absolutely incredible, and once again, this is something that I think the teachers, I do believe that it's going to be into the curriculum, and the teachers will be helped by these coaches during release time. The next one, which we've talked about before, but update, I will be going up to the university tomorrow to meet with the chancellors, some of the chancellors' people, to try to come up with the final approach to this situation with NASA. We're fortunate enough to be able to bring back Chris Cassidy, who just came back from the space station, and he will be coming to visit us in the spring, which again is an incredible opportunity for our students to be able to experience something like this and to be able to talk with and listen to the things that actually take place. And the last one, which was extremely important, and that was the thrust of the meeting, and that was the Director of Grants and Partnership Development. And just very quickly, I want to thank so many different people for that, but certainly we want to appreciate the donors and the project advisor, the Executive Advisory Board, and I want to say that it was a project that it wouldn't have happened, again, unless it was the support of the school committee, allowing this to happen and go out to the business community. And I don't know of any other place around that the business community has financed a particular job, in this situation, a grant writer, to help our school system, and they financed it totally by contributions, and I think it's absolutely incredible partnership. And I want to give a special thanks to, obviously, the donors, but to Kendall Wallace, and also to Brian Martin, Steve Jonkers, George Duncan. These were the people that went out to raise that money. And it was an incredible amount of money, in the vicinity of about $500,000, and they did it in quick time. And I know the superintendent myself talked about it numerous times, and I don't think we would have been able to raise that money ourselves, but these people went out, they talked to the right individuals, they believed in the project, and Judge Duncan talked about the individual that came on board, and her name is Susan Lynn. And again, this was a partnership through the university also, and the business community, and Judge Duncan said that it's a game changer for the city of Lowell. And he was very excited about it, and I think everyone is excited about this, because now she is going to go after grants that can help to supplement and help to enhance our programs in our school system. And from what I have heard from the people that have sat down and interviewed her, that she was truly a professional and knew what she was talking about. So again, we welcomed her at the subcommittee meeting and also the school committee meeting. And I want to say that Ms. Connie Martin spoke about the partnerships in the city and talking about how important they were, and especially I think of this one here, because again, we have the nonprofits, we have UMass, Middlesex, and the business community, and they're all coming together for the benefit of our school system. And Ms. Ross-Sikowicz also thanked everyone for their dedicated work, and once again, I want to thank the school committee for allowing this to happen and giving the support that they did. And we had a motion to recommend to the committee as a whole to accept all topics discussed as a report of progress. Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. On the motion, Ms. Oh, thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Madam Superintendent?
No, just really quickly, this is a Lowell story, a support like this from a city with private donations. I just want to always say thank you to the donator, to people who've donated, as well as the people who made this happen. And every time we receive a grant as a result of this for the good of the children of Lowell, I'm going to say a public thank you. So thank you for the.
Thank you. Next report is Student Support Services report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, September 26, 2013. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Okay, so it was myself and Mr. Gignac in attendance, along with Superintendent Jean Franco, Assistant Superintendent Jeannie Durkin, City Solicitor Christine O'Connor, Assistant City Solicitor Gina Atwood, Lowell High School Headmaster Brian Martin, Andrea Lasky from Lowell Community Health Center. There were two items on the agenda. The first item is Lowell High School Community Health Center condom availability, and the second item on the agenda was the Lowell Public Schools Bully Prevention Policy and Intervention Plan update. So on the first agenda item, Assistant City Solicitor Gina Atwood reviewed findings addressing the motion regarding the legality of condom availability at Lowell High School's school-based health center. Ms. Atwood addressed policies from other school communities in the Commonwealth, responses by the Commonwealth to challenges to those policies, and the statutory landscape requiring that public schools include parental notification with an opt-out option for schools providing sexual education curriculum. I might also add that Ms. Atwood is here with us this evening. We, as a subcommittee, reviewed the draft opt-out policy, the draft policy, including the opt-out piece, and these materials were provided to us by Ms. Andrea Lasky from the Lowell Community Health Center, and we discussed the plan for notifying parents annually as part of the Lowell High School Student and Parent Handbook. Headmaster Martin recommended that Lowell Community Health Center, commended Lowell Community Health Center for their efforts to address the motion to make condoms available at Lowell High School. Of course, with with health education, with confidential health education, and concurred with the superintendent about the inclusion of the opt-out option to be made available to our families. We discussed notification of parents and guardians and meeting with Lowell High School administrators to determine the best way to proceed with parental notification for the 2013-2014, that's the current school year. So there was motion by Mr. Gignac, seconded by myself, to recommend to the full committee the adoption of the Lowell Community Health Center guidelines for condom distribution at the Lowell High School school-based health center with the addition of the parental notification and opt-out option for families.
It's a tricky one.
Thank you, and I would submit that as a motion.
Motion by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Ms. Scott. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Conway.
Yeah, I have a few questions, a couple comments and a few questions, Mr. Mayor. I think that I've been involved with the school system for many years, and I think that we certainly are constantly trying to provide to the families and to the students the most updated health information, and so that students are as healthy as they possibly can. I think also what has been brought forward is the fact that, to inform parents and to inform the students about the program. I think that what we need to do, and it obviously is going to be part of it, and that is the opt-out program. I think that's extremely important, because after all, when you really think about it, the parents are, the health proxies of each child, and not only that, but they're also, I think, the moral advisor, and that's extremely important that we have that opt-out. My concern too is that, with high school kids, we want to make sure that that information gets to the parents and that it's perfectly clear. That opt-out policy needs to be flawless, that whole process and that whole procedure. We can't afford mistakes in that, Madam Superintendent. And I know that everyone is going to try as much as possible to make sure that it's done correctly. I think also what is extremely important, and we've already talked about it, but I think it's very, very important about the consistency of the counseling for students. That has to be the template has to be there. You can't give one message to one and a different message to someone else. Now, we're very fortunate that we have great partners, especially in our medical field too, and I have all the confidence in the world that this is going to be this is going to work out fine. My other concern, and it's just a housekeeping one, Madam Superintendent, this has to go into the handbook. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Conway, it is a new procedural piece. Sorry. It will go into the handbook, yes.
That for next year it will go in. So what are we going to do this year what type of amendment are we going to have to the handbook? Or how is that what's that process or procedure, do you know?
The plan that was discussed on the floor was to inform parents in the most comprehensive way, is to include this new opt-out and procedural piece in official mailing to the home. So it would be done with a direct connect to the home, if in fact approved this evening. And so that we would not make it any kind of a through children, because we know that that's not the most effective way to make sure information gets to homes. So it would be mailed to the homes. We know, Mr. Conway, when you do a mailing, and we do that for report cards, and so when that happens, whenever the next mailing, or whatever the will of the committee is on timing, then we also know which ones get returned to us, because, with the addresses, and so we have a good record of who is getting that information for the opt-out and the policy. So that was what was talked about at the table with Mr. Martin present.
But, Madam Superintendent, when we give out when we give out our student handbooks at the beginning of the year, there's in the front, Ms. Durkin could probably refresh my memory on this. I'm not sure if there's one sheet or two sheets, but is a signature for the student and also for the parent saying that they've read it and so forth. So when this piece goes out, this amendment to the student handbook, my suggestion would be that that's returned just the same. This is very important. I think it's important that we get that return back and we put it into their file in the House office, so you do have a record, or you put it somewhere to have a record of it, to make sure. As I said, the other point too is the counseling. Now, is there anything in there for if parents want to ask questions, they have concerns? Where would they go and who would they see to consult with?
I'm going to ask Ms. Durkin to answer directly because she's been the most directly involved with the whole policy. But I know the counseling at the health center is very serious, and it follows all of the guidelines that you have to for treating children. So I'll ask Ms. Durkin if there's any specific information according to that particular.
Thank you.
I was wondering if I could have permission for Andrea Lasky to speak on behalf of the informing families and what they do specifically at the health center.
I think that's up to Mr. Mayor.
Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Conway.
Thank you.
Seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Please.
I think, if I'm correct, is the question about consistency in counseling. If somebody is requesting, what are you specifically asking for? Could you clarify that?
Well, what I'm saying is that if somebody is going to partake in the program, that there would be some type of counseling before they did, and talk about absence being the most important, of course. But what program, what will be said, or I shouldn't say the specifics, but is there a template that is going to be said to a student that wants to be part of the program?
First, abstinence is always brought into educational counseling, always. Providers don't necessarily have a template of exactly what they're going to say. Encompassed within that is talking about risks, talking about safety, talking about safe behaviors and risk factors, abstinence, and obviously how to use the usage of the condom itself. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Once again, I just, and I think anything that we do and what we've done in education is that we try to have some type of consistency, let's say from school to school or from class to class. So in this situation here, I just want to make sure that that students are informed. I'm trying to be a little overprotective, and I know that somebody might be thinking it's obstructionist, but I want to make sure that this is something that's extremely important. I think that we need to get it right, and perhaps I might apologize for asking so many questions, but I think it's necessary to do that. I think that parents would want to know that there's a consistency to it. And again, I think that parents might have questions themselves, and where do they go to find out specifically about what is going on with their son or their child if they decide that they want them to participate or allowing them to participate?
Parents can always call the school-based health center. There are some situations in which confidentiality, in which we have to uphold HIPAA laws, which is we have to do that. But they are more than welcome to call at the school-based health center and talk to the nurse practitioner or talk to the practice coordinator there, or myself.
when that letter goes home, Madam Superintendent, I would assume that information would be in there to the parents, telling them that they could call and give the numbers and so forth. Is that correct?
Of course, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And just one other quick thing too is that no matter what we do, no matter what program we put into place, there's always follow-up, and we're always weighing whether the program is effective or not. You know, when, for example, the state takes a look at our schools, they measure whether they're successful or not. I think that the same thing with our teachers and our administrators. They're evaluated to make sure that things are done correctly. I think that what I'd like to see here, and I'm sure that the medical people could certainly get this type of information, I would assume, but a follow-up study should take place at the end of the year to see if the program is effective and whether it's working and whether it should continue. Because obviously they're looking for certain results, and I think at the end of the year they should be able to decipher some of that information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Rosikowicz.
Yes, and actually going off of what Mr. Conway had just mentioned, I think it's also, I mean, this motion came about as a result of a data that was presented to the Student Support Services Subcommittee with regard to the spread of, actually the dramatic increase of sexually transmitted diseases amongst students in our high school. It also came about as a result of data of our pregnancy, our high school pregnancy data. And, so this is a health issue. This is not, yes, it's an education issue, but, this is a health issue for our student population, and where this motion is to allow licensed healthcare providers to do what they do best. And I am quite certain that we can obtain data next year, or at the end of this year, or next fall, where we would be able to determine the progress that the implementation of this particular policy would net us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one other quick question.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent, is this your recommendation?
I do concur with the with the
Okay.
recommendation.
And the headmaster, would it be his recommendation too?
Yes.
That is what Mr. Martin agreed at the subcommittee meeting, even as far as the timing, that he preferred to notify parents earlier rather than waiting till next year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Ms. Rosikowicz.
Okay, the second item on this agenda was the Lowell Public Schools Bully Prevention Policy and Intervention Plan Update. Assistant Superintendent Jeannie Durkin discussed the amendment to the bullying law, Section 370 of Chapter 71 in the FY14 budget, which includes inserting after the words students the following words, or by a member of a school staff, including but not limited to an educator, administrator, school nurse, cafeteria worker, custodian, bus driver, athletic coach, advisor to an extracurricular activity, or paraprofessional. The difference from the prior policy to the new policy, it includes, rather than this policy being applied exclusively to students or peers who bully one another, this also applies to staff that are working with our students. We inquired about staff and parent guardian notification of the changes which were addressed, and we were assured that that notification would be made available to all of our families, notifying them as to the policy change. And there was a motion by Mr. Gignac, seconded by myself, to recommend to the full committee the adoption of the Lowell Public Schools policy on bullying as drafted.
Motion by Ms. Rosikowicz, second by Ms. Martin. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Ms. Rosikowicz? Ms. Rosikowicz? Ms.
Excuse me, I would submit that as a report of progress.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Finance Subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, September 30th, 2013. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. First, this subcommittee was it was held based on 2 motions, one from myself and one from Ms. Martin, looking at the class sizes. I just want to thank, in attendance were numerous kindergarten teachers and other school professionals that came to, some retired kindergarten teachers actually, who came to really implore that we work hard to reduce the class sizes in kindergarten. And I think the general consensus of that meeting really was that we are going to do that. And one of the best, probably the most profound statements made is, if you get a kindergarten-sized class down to 18, why is that an issue? And based on the numbers. And it was a profound statement because we all have run a school committee to reduce class size. And we all are cognizant of how important that is. And having the feedback and the support of kindergarten teachers when often some parents can't come down and support was extremely powerful. And it took a lot of courage because you're coming out and you are speaking up and you're being noticed for speaking up. And I think we all on the subcommittee, the Finance Subcommittee, appreciate their involvement and their courage. Attendance at the subcommittee was myself, Connie Martin, and Kim Scott, and additional Rob Gignac from the school committee. The big issue at that point is really how do we make a change in what we're doing right now in the kindergarten classes. And the biggest issue is really looking at how we got to this point. But the focus of the meeting was not on the NASTEC numbers, although we assured everyone that we'll be holding and discussing issues with NASTEC this month in terms of how we go forward planning in the future. What the issue now is how do you address this concern. The recommendations, and I'll go quickly through it, the recommendations at this point was to hire 1 additional kindergarten teacher and paraprofessional at the Rogers schools to freeze all K and 1 enrollments across the city. So any new individuals coming into the city would go into a new kindergarten class. We would not add an additional student into any one of our kindergartens throughout the city. All new kindergarten K-1 grade students into the system will be going to the Rogers School. In addition, providing additional instructional support in all school buildings by hiring 2 part-time tutors for each larger building, our strands 4 and 5. And 1 part-time tutor for our smaller strands, being the strands with 2 strands, 2 classrooms, Washington, the Moody, Pine Arts, and the Bartlett Community Partnership School. We did acknowledge that there are, specifically the Riley School with 5 strands, that we're going to look at that again because it is a larger school. But for this point and going through this meeting, we did recommend 2 tutors for that school as well. The third recommendation was an additional need is to add 1 district-wide newcomer or K through 4 newcomer and 1 new paraprofessional for the Rogers School. So all newly arrived students that will be housed at the Rogers School for 1 year. So the financial recommendations come from the successful involvement of our new contract with the food service, which is bringing us sufficient monies to be able to do this. The actual motion was made by Ms. Martin and second by Kim Scott to take a total of $453,520 to pay for 2 teachers, 2 paraprofessionals, and 24 tutors. At this point, I make that as a motion for the full committee.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. On the motion, any discussion? Ms. Scott.
I would just like to agree with Mr. Leary. It was a very powerful meeting, and I'd like to thank the staff for taking their time to come to it. It really gave you a glimpse into the day of a teacher, a kindergarten teacher with 29 children in an inclusion classroom, and it really put a lot in perspective for me. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Mr.
Just
Leary.
to close it, basically, the committee really, the subcommittee really focused on what the teachers were saying, and you'll be seeing a lot of different changes coming forth from some of those recommendations. Some of them have already occurred tonight when we're looking at reducing the class size for the recommendations from OMR. So it's already begun, but I think, as any one of the members can attest, there's a lot of information, and we really appreciate their involvement. You'll be seeing a lot of different specific action taking place. So I take that as a motion, as a report of progress. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Personnel Subcommittee report of the meeting of Wednesday, October 2nd, 2013. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Personnel Subcommittee did meet immediately preceding this meeting earlier this evening. Basically, we went through the materials that the superintendent has submitted to us for consideration during our evaluation process of her performance this past year. The entire committee will be polled, and we will be having a special meeting of the entire school committee to present our results of the evaluation. We'll be using the same basic instrument that we did use last year, so we'll be using the same evaluation instrument that is being implemented across our district for all of our educators and administrators here in the city of Lowell. So we'll look forward to getting those results and being able to share them with our community. I would submit that as a report of progress.
Very well done, Ms. Martin. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have reports of the superintendent. First report is the progress report on the Lowell High School Apple TV pilot program. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, this school committee approved moving forward with an Apple TV pilot at Lowell High School. That incorporated having 31 classrooms become equipped with monitors and the ability to show real data and real where video and all kinds of progressive information directly to students. I was on a tour with Assistant Superintendent Abrams just a week ago because Mr. Silva wanted us to actually experience walking through these classrooms. And this report has details about that visit, and also it tells what teachers thought about the pilot as we go. I will say that the engagement and the use of information systems was really very impressive. The teachers themselves were at all different levels of becoming more aware of different resources they could use, technology-based. It's been a great deal of work on their time, but I will say that my interpretation totally as a teacher, as an educator, was the engagement of the young people as they looked and were put into actually triads. There's 3 screens, 3 sections of children all on board. It was very, very welcoming to see this kind of technology. And I noticed, just because I can listen, that within a matter of minutes, children were on focus in that classroom, which is not always the case in every classroom. It takes time to get to that point. I am not going to go into the details, but it is interesting to look at the feedback from teachers, because what Mr. Silver and his team at the high school has arranged is extra training, extra support as the teachers have become involved. But these were all volunteer teachers to take part in this this important pilot, and it was really very impressive. Now, in this report, Mr. Silver welcomes any of you or who would like to see this particular program to please let us know, because it is worth seeing. And so I just wanted to give you an update.
Thank you. Mr. Leary.
Just quickly, I did actually see them. I haven't actually seen them working, so I guess that's the next picture of it. No pun intended. I get the part of the motion that we passed tonight. I think we should look at what the pitfalls are too. What's working, what's not working, and be honest with each other. We did put a large sum of dollars into it. It's an aggressive approach, so let's be forthcoming. If there's some issues that we need to work on, let's work on them. Let's get together and make things happen in a way that's effective. But I am excited to see that we are going in a different direction, and I look forward to having some positive actual results in education derived from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Ms. Rosikowicz.
I just have one comment. You know, we have a district very close to us in Burlington that has, it's an Apple, they have some Apple accreditation, or they're an Apple designated district, and I wonder if it's at all possible even to draw on their expertise. I mean, they've rolled it out district-wide, and, we're, piloting certain things in certain schools and in certain classrooms, and I almost wonder if it would be feasible to draw on their expertise. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the report as report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next report on the payments of stipends to Lowell High School coaches. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in answer to a motion by committee member David Conway to ask the superintendent to develop a system and procedure that will ensure consistency and regular payment of stipends to our coaches. And Mr. Lang is giving us a schedule of how the stipends are paid in 1/3 installments. So he's doing that and arranging that for every season. But he also has put the dates when those will be done for this particular season. So one payment in October, one in November, and one in December is when these will be paid out for this particular season. And that's going to be the process ongoing as seasons occur.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, then Mr. Leary.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I thank you for kind of spelling this out here. And will all the coaches receive this type of information here, so that they'll know exactly what day they're going to be paid on?
Yes, I sent it over to the athletic department. Excuse me, I sent it to the athletic department, and then they can share it with the coaches. But these are public dates.
Okay. Is it, when you sent it over there, did you ask the athletic director to share it with the coaches?
No, quite honestly, I just assumed they would,
Okay.
but I will follow up with you. On the
Okay,
point.
thank you, I appreciate that. The only thing here that when I take a look up there in the second or third sentence, says, "We make every attempt to be consistent." In this technologically advanced age, I would think that we could make sure. I mean, can you imagine if I said to you, Friday you get paid, and I'll tell you, we're gonna make every attempt to pay you on Friday. We might not be able to, but we're gonna make every attempt. You'd scratch your head and say, there's got to be some consistency to it. So I think that, that's the only thing that bothered me there, and I'm sure it's going to work out from this point on. But again, these coaches, they're not making a lot of money, and for the amount of time that they spend. So I'd just like to make sure that somehow we plug those numbers into one of those little computers that you have, and that we can get this to work. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary.
I don't know how to follow up with that, but maybe you have a big computer you could plug it into. I just make a motion to put it to the athletic subcommittee to discuss in more detail. Make that as a motion.
Motion to refer to the athletic subcommittee by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Entertain a motion to accept the report as report of progress. So moved by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the emergency texting program. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion, a response to a motion made by committee member Robert Gignac to request the superintendent to research the possibility of enrolling the district in an emergency text messaging program similar to programs that colleges and universities use to notify students, staff, and parents of an on-campus emergency. This report is telling us that with the new upgrades, with the Connect Ed system, the Blackboard Connect, that there is in fact a cell phone and an emergency text ability through that particular process. Also, we can put the messages on Facebook and Twitter at the same time, so we do have that capacity. The next step is to see how extensive the email system is for us to use, or for us to be able to use phone calls to text. So I'll ask Mr. Lang about that, but we do have the capabilities. Now it's the implementation piece.
The only thing I would add is we certainly have the capabilities. We have the ability right now, and the easy one is to send out, obviously, the phone calls to parents. And because we have the telephone numbers, as long as they're a cell phone number, we can text out to them. We don't have email addresses for all parents and things like that. But as that data gets into our system, obviously, we can avail ourselves to that other form of communication. But in an emergency right now, we have the ability to send it out to any media that we have parental contact for. So I'm comfortable with that.
Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, can we put something on the website that voluntary parents can fill it out if they would like to receive an email or text message? First thing that comes to mind, other than on-campus emergencies, if something's happening in a school and a parent would like to know, just a few days ago there was some schools without power, a text message, a quick text message, a phone call would be great. Sometimes people aren't home to answer the phone, but everybody gets a text message for the most part. Also, once winter comes, snow days, snow delays, the text messages is easier to wake up to rather than Mr. Lang on the phone at 5 a.m. So I'd rather see a text message, but I think it's good that we already have the capability, but I don't need an aggressive rollout. Just to see that it works appropriately, I think makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Ms. Scott?
I just have one question for Mr. Lang. The current system that we have right now, when parents fill out the form at the beginning of the year with the phone number, the cell phone number, alternate cell phone number, there's like 20 different fields to fill out. The only field that is used is the primary phone number, correct?
No, the system is set up in such a way that for generic outreach messages that we send to the homes, like if you would receive a call from your principal about a parent night or whatnot, that's considered just a traditional outreach message. It only captures the primary phone number, which typically is the home phone number. Now, when we do the snow calls, that's the number that the snow calls go out to because it's not an emergency. So we can't just text that one because text won't go through to some people's homes. So they're still going to get the voice. In an emergency situation, there's a different setting you can go into, and that emergency broadcasts out to every contact mean within that form. So we rely on the schools to put the accurate information into X2, the student database system for the kids and the parents, home phones, cell phones, whatnot. If we were to broadcast as a district out an emergency message, it's going to go out to any of the numbers and all that are actually listed as opposed to just the primary. So in an emergency situation, it might go to 4 or 5 different telephone numbers, even multiple contacts. So if you had a father and a mother and they both had cell phones, it would grab both to send an emergency broadcast out.
Okay, I was just curious about how it worked because during the power outage, the big ice storm, there was a lot of parents, and I was glad to see Mr. Gignac's motion. There were a lot of parents that were concerned that that did not happen, that the secondary number was not used. So that is the proper procedure as long as it's entered correctly.
It depends. Whoever's actually making the announcement, whoever's making the call, has to determine what level of call they want to make. Is it just an outreach call, or is it an actual emergency? And if it's an emergency, then it would go out to all numbers.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Rossikovich, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a report on human resource and payroll systems. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. In response to a motion by committee member David Conway, request the superintendent report on whether systems now in place are adequate to prevent salary discrepancies from occurring in the future. Mr. Lang reports that a new tracking system has been created within X2 that provides fields of documentation, current payroll information, as well as tracking future advancement. Also stating that employees themselves are able to verify information through checking with X2 so that it is a more accurate and up-to-date system.
Mr. Conway.
Yeah, just very quickly, if there happened to be a mistake, so that we don't run into the problems that we have had in the past, which became kind of costly. Is there a way that we can send out a notice if there's a mistake, if there's mistakes made or a mistake made, that we send out a notice to the teachers, check your paycheck to make sure that it's correct, because once again, if there's one mistake, then there could be 2, 10, 20, or whatever it may be. Just so that we're always up to date with it. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on that is that capability certainly is there, and I know folks are instructed each year to verify their pay to make sure the proper step and lane is being compensated. But by automating the system in X2, a teacher in real time can go in, and it's right there on their screen. They can verify what step and lane they're being paid at. So if there's an error, they can bring it to our attention right then.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Conklin.
I mean, how would it be an error? How would you have an error if you are receiving the same amount of money every week? How would there be an error all of a sudden one particular week?
Well, no, there wouldn't be in any one particular week.
Oh,
I'm just saying, like, at the start of a school year, if you were supposed to move from step 6 to step 7.
I see.
It's still, keyed into the system. If
Okay.
by chance you get your first paycheck and it's still at step 6, you can go on the computer and see what step you're being compensated at and notify us right then, as opposed to waiting in the long term.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the report on health insurance savings from the GIC conversion. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is information in response to a motion by committee member Mr. Conway requesting superintendent to work with city officials to determine the exact amount of savings afforded to the city by the conversion of the school department employees from their current health insurance plan to the GIC Group Insurance Commission. This is data from 2009 to the present. Mr. Lang has done all the research. He knows it off the top of his head, so I'm going to ask him to report.
Thank you. Just briefly, the information provided is just look at a 6-year window. I looked at 5 years of actuals and then just 1 year of projected. Basically, the change for us, we see hits in fiscal 13, which was the first year that we switched from being a self-funded health insurer to participating in the GIC. In that first year, we realized an actual savings of about $1.2 million. This past year, the savings was greater as well. It was $1.3 million. If you look at the cumulative effect of that savings over 3 years, it's about $3.7 million. And that's, again, I indicated was a low estimate because we don't know what the actual rates would have been if we went in fiscal 12 to 13, if we stayed self-funded. That's why I showed you the trends in the far right-hand column, because you can assume it would be some percentage increase so that the savings technically is even greater. But just based on the actual hard numbers in real budget dollars that we had to allocate and appropriate, we've saved so far $3.7 million in savings from that conversion. Again, I indicate that the fiscal 14 numbers are just our budgeted numbers, and I'll watch those as the year goes on and update them to actuals as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Yeah, I would just want to thank Mr. Lang for that report. Appreciate it.
Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Lowell High School reception area update. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, in fact, telling us about the staff entrance. It's a motion from Mr. James Leary, requests the superintendent and her staff explore feasibility, provide a recommendation on establishing a central entrance and reception security station in the main lobby of the 1980 building at Lowell High School. This year, there is a substantial change. Not only does the headmaster give me his parking space, which is very cool, I'm greeted by the security officer who is there every time I've been in the high school, which has already been probably 7 or 8 times, because we go for meetings. And so there is a security officer that is stationed regularly at that particular site, and it is a dynamic change. So it is something I think we've accomplished.
Mr. Leary.
Just thank you very much. I really appreciate the effort, and I appreciate the headmaster implementing it.
Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Special Education Parent Education Program report. Madam Superintendent.
thank you. This actually refers to a comment that Mr. Lear made earlier when we're building our internal programs. Earlier this year, the committee was, it was requested for us to change some home children to be serviced by Lowell Public Schools employee. It was approximately $70,000. We used to provide the service to Gluck. It has now been quoted as $47,000. And to allow this change to happen for us to be providing these services, we need a transfer in the budget. So the amount from the 2014 budget is $47,000 from home parent education program stipends to come from out-of-district tuition. So I recommend that the school committee votes to transfer $47,000 from the out-of-district tuition account and establish a new home parent education program stipend account.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Conway? No discussion. I entertain then a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved.
I was trying to make a motion.
The report calls for the motion at the next regular meeting. So, okay, so that's tonight based upon Mr. Lang's. We have a motion then to make the transfer of $47,000 from the out-of-district tuition account to establish a new home parent education program stipends account. So moved by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Any discussion on this motion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Lowell High School Career Academy at the Hugh J. Malloy School Hour Change. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report alludes to when the Director of Alternative Education for Lowell High School Academy was approved at a Student Support Subcommittee meeting way back in February. It was approved, and that, of course, went forward. At that time, another additional request was not addressed, and it's something that has been requested from the school. It is for, like the other alternative schools, for there to be a common planning time weekly, case management time for the school year to, in fact, go one time a week on Wednesday from 7:40 to 8:40, so that, in fact, the teachers can have that common time to look at students' case manage. It is something that we do have at our other alternative schools, but it was something we did not request at the time of the transfer in that building to the new leadership model. So for your review and questions.
Any discussion of this report? I'd entertain a motion then to provide 1 hour delayed school start time at the Lowell High School Career Academy on Wednesdays, changing time from 7:40 to 8:40 to align with all the Lowell Public Schools alternative education buildings planning time schedules. So moved by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress. So moved by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under new business, we have permission to post for academic lead teachers at Lowell High School. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, earlier this year, we were looking at the lead teacher posting, and so it was discussed, I believe, at a Lowell High School subcommittee meeting, that they wanted a little time to reassess the high school, because we do not have the existing careers that had the same career academies we had over time. This is a recommendation from Headmaster Martin and Director of Curriculum McLeod, who are looking to fill on the second page, these academic lead teacher positions. There are the same number that are in the budget. They just think that this is the best use of the academic chairs. They also have changed in the job description, using the effective teaching, making sure goals and objectives, and also some coaching pieces to this particular. So this has been upgraded for your review before we have permission to post. And still the same time allotment, but they reassessed the needs of the high school, and this is the recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion of this report? Entertain then a motion? Motion to approve by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Roll call, please.
Mia Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have convention and conference requests. I'd entertain a motion to take the two together. So moved by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Scott. Roll call, please.
Mia Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have Massachusetts Association of School Committees Incorporated. Vote of the official delegate for Friday, November 8th, 2013, for the MASC Annual Business Meeting. This vote requires that you actually name the delegate, and if you name me, I will take all the good things that I said about you tonight back. Is there anyone who's interested in going on November 8th? All the hands fly up. Well, I get the first vote, so. Roll call.
Mia Murphy?
Mr. Leary.
Ms. Rosikowicz? The mayor said Mr. Leary. Ms. Scott?
Mr. Gignac?
Mr. Conway?
Mr. Leary.
Mr. Gignac?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Leary?
Oh, Mr. Gignac.
And Ms. Martin?
I can't make it, so it's a useless vote.
It's big talk. Mr. Leary.
Mr. Leary.
How many votes for Mr. Leary?
I'm really not quite sure. Hold on.
I believe that's three votes. One of you has to change your vote to make it unit.
Mr. Leary.
Ms. Rosikowicz wishes to change her vote to Mr. Leary to make it 4 votes. Mr. Leary will enjoy November 8th. Next, we have, under Communications, Headmaster Brian Martin, on behalf of the Lowell High School Distinguished Alumni Board of Directors, requests permission to obtain a one-day liquor license for the November 7th, 2013 induction ceremony. This event will be held in the Cyrus Irish Auditorium from 6 to 9 p.m. 2013 honorees include Frank Goldman, the class of 1907, Mary Agnes Halloran, class of 1925, Arthur C. Anton, class of 1943, James S. Herscott, class of 1954, and George Mickey Ward, the class of 1991. Motion to approve by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Roll call, please.
Mia Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? 7 yeas, approved.
Entertain a motion to adjourn by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We stand adjourned.